So let's set the stage a bit. This is round 2. That means every single one of these albums is already a qualified winner. They've all survived an initial elimination round.
They are established contenders. This is not, a mix of classics and some forgettable filler. These are 4 established winners fighting for just 2 coveted slots in round 3.
And the lineup for Group 38 was, well, on paper, it looked heavily skewed toward legacy rock. We had 2 cornerstone records from the heyday of stadium rock, 4 by Foreigner.
A monster album.
A monster. And Head Games, also by Foreigner. These are albums that, they soundtracked millions of lives and really defined an entire era of rock music.
But standing against those 80s arena giants were 2 profound wildcards. You had Affirmation by Savage Garden, a late 90s Australian pop masterpiece.
And The Pick of Destiny by Tenacious D, a comedy rock soundtrack.
A comedy rock soundtrack.
Yeah. And the unexpected conclusion. The classic Foreigner albums, 4 and Head Games, which are just saturated in nostalgia and feature multi-platinum hits, were unceremoniously knocked out.
By the comedy rock band and the late 90s pop duo.
That is the ultimate upset victory.
So our goal today is to unpack that Greens to Rocks review entirely. We need to go past the result and get into the detailed, nuanced, track-level analysis. We have to understand the metric he used that allowed, production quality and consistent tone to utterly defeat years and years of personal history. So before we can even appreciate the scale of this upset, I think we have to appreciate the pedigree of the albums involved. Just reaching round 2 in this album quest is a badge of honor, right?
No, absolutely. And every album here overcame some pretty surprising stylistic hurdles just to get out of round 1. The strength of these contenders is established not just by their hits, but by the stylistic gauntlet they ran.
Let's look at the qualifications then, because they immediately tell you what kind of battlefield this quest is.
Let's start with Savage Garden's Affirmation, which ultimately took the top slot in this group. It qualified way back in round 1, Group 94. And the depth of that group is really telling.
Okay, so who did it beat?
Affirmation had to triumph over Kaleidoscope World by Swing Out Sister.
Wow, okay.
And I Brought You My Bullets by My Chemical Romance.
Get out.
Yeah.
Seriously. So you have smooth, sophisticated sophisti-pop from the late 80s.
Right, a really complex, polished sound.
And then the raw, passionate, early 2000s emo energy of My Chemical Romance. And Affirmation, this late 90s polished global pop record, is stuck right in the middle.
Exactly. It had to be stylistically robust enough to satisfy a fan of either of those niches just to succeed. It proved its foundational quality right there, just by holding its ground against 2 incredibly different but very loyal fan bases.
That speaks volumes about its unexpected depth. Okay, what about the dark horse? Tenacious D's The Pick of Destiny.
Right. So this one qualified from round 1, Group 153. And this right here is where we get the clearest indication of the quest's values.
This is the result I'm still struggling to rationalize. So, The Pick of Destiny defeated 2 heavyweight, critically revered albums.
Go on.
Kid A by Radiohead and Seal, 1994 by Seal.
It's astonishing, isn't it? Kid A is this highly experimental, critically revered, genre-redefining album that essentially reset Radiohead's entire trajectory. It is considered a modern classic of intellectual music.
And it lost to a 33-minute comedy rock soundtrack.
It did.
Wait, how can we trust a methodology that prioritizes, fun and narrative coherence over the technical brilliance and critical consensus of something like Kid A?
But that is the genius of the quest, and it's why we're doing this. It proves that the quest rewards albums that fully execute their intent. If Tenacious D set out to create a hilarious, technically competent hard rock tribute and parody for a film, and they completely nailed it,
then that execution
beats the highly ambitious, maybe occasionally uneven brilliance of Kid A. It tells us that Greens to Rocks values entertainment, musical proficiency within a niche, and narrative drive just as high as, or maybe even higher than, highbrow critical merit.
That reframes the entire concept. The rules of the quest aren't purely academic. They're focused on successful execution and just, listenability. Okay, so let's look at the eliminated Foreigner albums. They also had tough paths to get here. Head Games qualified from round 1, Group 63. It defeated From Here to Infirmary by Alkaline Trio.
Modern punk.
And Standing on the Shoulders of Giants by Oasis.
Another beautiful generational clash, right?
Yeah.
A classic AOR staple beating modern punk and Britpop titans. It confirms that legacy still matters at the entry stage, but it is not the only factor.
Okay, and finally 4 by Foreigner, the album that would ultimately rank dead last in this group. He qualified from round 1, Group 83, defeating the best of Nick Kershaw and All Right Still by Lily Allen.
And its path, I have to mention this, its path included a particularly strange competitor, something called 100 Relaxing Classics Vol. 2.
I love that. I love that inclusion. It shows the quest isn't just limited to conventional albums.
Not at all.
But the central takeaway from this section is clear. These are not weak albums. They all fought and won against diverse competition just to earn their spot in round 2. They have established credibility.
And what's fascinating here is that the author, Greensterox, openly admits a profound, long-standing, and foundational appreciation for Foreigner. This is not casual fandom.
Right.
He explicitly states that at around age 16, Foreigner, alongside Roxette, was his favorite band, period.
And he attributes this devotion to what he calls their powerful triad of albums that cemented Foreigner as absolute greatness personified.
Those 3 records were their greatest hits, 1977, 1981, The Incredible Agent Provocateur, and the later comeback album, Mr. Moonlight.
And he shares this amazing personal anecdote that connects the music physically to his life.
The cassette tape.
The cassette tape. He actually had Agent Provocateur on side 1 paired with Marillion's Misplaced Childhood on side 2. And he listened to that tape over and over on his Walkman while walking to school.
I mean, that combination of AOR and progressive rock, you have polished stadium hooks on one side and a complex concept narrative on the other, that tells you everything you need to know about his sophisticated musical DNA.
It's such a powerful emotional foundation. It's a literal cornerstone of his music memory. And that deep connection is reflected elsewhere in the quest. We know Agent Provocateur isn't even in this group.
Right, because it's already a proven round 3 record.
It's already won. It defeated The Sound of Girls Aloud, the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour, and Marillion's Season's End. Foreigner is an absolute institution in this quest.
So we have an undeniable premise here. The blogger loves Foreigner. One of their albums is a confirmed round 3 contender. So this is the moment we have to ask. How on earth did the 2 albums in this group, 4 and Head Games, fail so spectacularly against Tenacious D and Savage Garden?
And this is where we run straight into what we can call the nostalgia barrier. It seems that personal history, while it's important for qualification, it just cannot guarantee victory in a structured ranking like this.
Not at all. And the most formative experience with Foreigner for the blogger was centered on Mr. Moonlight. That album really served as the catalyst that drove him deeper into their catalog.
That was the 1995 Wembley Arena gig,
right.
His first ever rock concert. And the context of that show needs to be understood by you, the listener. It was the mid-90s. We're talking about AOR, adult-oriented rock. That specific subgenre of stadium rock that prioritizes those massive, slick hooks and polished production over, raw grit.
And it wasn't the commercial behemoth it had been in the 80s?
No. He noted the arena was only about 60% full, which reflects that commercial decline.
And he had to sit through that unique 50-50 show format, enduring the entire Doobie Brothers set list first, a band I think he said he was entirely unfamiliar with.
But when Foreigner took the stage, it was pure, unadulterated classic rock magic. Lou Gramm sounded superb, Mick Jones delivered a pitch-perfect rendition, and the band, as he puts it, absolutely killed it.
And the excitement was driven by the new material from Mr. Moonlight. They played White Lie, Rain, and, well, he humorously recalls Air, another one.
I love that. And that specific live experience led him immediately to buy the new CD, which just cemented the band's importance in his personal rock narrative.
But that history was built on an even older foundation, a 1993 Greatest Hits cassette. His search for the band began after hearing that quintessential rock power ballad, I've Been Waiting for a Girl Like You, on his brother's mixtape.
And that Greatest Hits track list, Cold as Ice, Head Games, Urgent, Jukebox Hero. That is the core DNA of his appreciation for the band.
And here is the damning connection to this specific group. If you cross-reference that foundational hits list, 50% of those classic era tracks feature across Head Games and 4.
That's a massive concentration of formative hits. So Head Games has Head Games and Dirty White Boy. And 4 delivers the colossal trio of Jukebox Hero, Waiting for a Girl Like You, and Urgent. That's 5 indisputable mega hits embedded in these 2 records.
So given the deep history, the nostalgia, the presence of 5 tracks that literally define his love for the band, the eventual verdict is, well, it's shocking. Greensterox concluded that despite the strength of those hits and the fact that all 4 albums were at least a mid-tier effort,
the 2 classic Foreigner albums were eliminated.
Eliminated, because the consistent quality of the winners was, quote, firmly above them.
Firmly above them. That implies that years of personal investment were just overruled by a cold, hard, track-by-track analysis of the source material. So how did that analysis play out? Let's start with the most famous one and the biggest surprise elimination. 4, which ranked dead last at 4th.
Commercially, 4 is their biggest success. It defined their stylistic shift toward that melodic synth AOR. It's a very slick, very deliberate product.
And it had the absolute best talent assembled for the task. They had Thomas Dolby on keyboards, bringing in that essential synth texture.
Right.
And the legendary Robert Mutt-Lange as producer.
Oh, yeah?
Lange, for any listener who doesn't know, is the architect of that massive, layered, immaculate rock sound. He's known for turning Def Leppard albums into untouchable sonic perfection.
And that very production is what makes the album so divisive in the Quest's context. The peaks are undeniable, the hits were never in doubt. Jukebox Hero is an epic narrative track. Waiting for a Girl Like You is the defining ballad.
And Urgent Greenstrawks even confessed it might be his favorite Foreigner song ever. He specifically cites its bouncy tempo and that superb saxophone solo by Junior Walker.
A great solo.
But the Quest environment, which rewards holistic, consistent quality, found 2 significant structural flaws that completely derailed 4.
Yes. The first problem, which speaks directly to Lange's production style, was what Greenstrawks called the shrill vocals.
Shrill vocals?
Yeah, he cites this on tracks like Don't Let Go, I'm Gonna Win, and even noticeable sections of the otherwise perfect Jukebox Hero.
On an album meant to be a masterpiece of polish, we have to debate this. Is it possible that Lange's desire for that crystal clear, maximized production, which often pushes vocals incredibly high in the mix to cut through the massive instrumentation?
That it ended up sounding dated, or maybe even irritating.
Yeah, upon repeated objective listening in the Quest.
That's absolutely the implication. Lange's method is all about maximized sound density, but sometimes when you sacrifice the natural warmth of a rock vocal for that polished, synthesized clarity, it can expose a certain harshness when you hear it decades later.
Especially on the non-hit tracks where the songwriting isn't quite carrying the load.
Exactly. And that leads directly to the second, and the major flaw that cost it the round, the clear gap in quality between those 3 sparkling hits and all the remaining tracks.
In contrast, is just too vast.
It is. When you listen to the total product, tracks like Break It Up and I'm Gonna Win are, in the blogger's estimation, merely okay, not terrible. But they are, and I'm quoting here, miles below Urgent and Waiting for a Girl Like You.
So when 40% of your album is iconic, but the other 60% feels like competent but uninspired filler, that lack of consistency is going to severely penalize the album in a ranking environment.
The troughs are just too deep compared to the peaks.
And that is the crucial insight here. A highly inconsistent album, even one with legendary hits, will fall to a more consistently good album. Which brings us to Head Games, which ranked 3rd, marginally above 4.
And Head Games benefited directly from the flaw that crippled 4. It was released earlier. It has a different sonic profile. While it may not have peaks quite as monumentally high as Urgent, though Dirty White Boy is close,
Right.
It has a better, more traditional rock and roll sound. And crucially, it has less imbalance between the hits and the deeper album tracks.
It's the consistency argument in perfect action.
Yeah.
The blogger describes the sound as raw and somewhat dirty. It starts strong with the title track and Dirty White Boy. And the album tracks like Love on the Telephone and Women are considered steady, quality AOR efforts, not just filler.
It carries itself well, and even though he notes the final third is the weakest section, it still manages to close on a high note with Rev on the Red Line, featuring Lou Gramm sounding as cool as ever.
So the central finding is that Head Games' superior overall consistency outweighed the incredible but highly inconsistent peaks of 4.
When you're grading the total source material, consistency wins the day.
Okay, so we've thoroughly analyzed why 2 classic albums, one for its inconsistent quality, the other for its lack of, peak brilliance, were eliminated. Now let's transition to the albums that actually took them down. Let's focus on their unexpected strengths and why the Quest rewarded them.
We're moving into the winner's circle, Tenacious D and Savage Garden. Let's start with the one that ranked 2nd and qualified for round 3, The Pick of Destiny by Tenacious D.
And again, we have to stress the context here. This is Tenacious D's 2nd studio album, produced to accompany their film.
And it forces that central philosophical question of the Quest right to the forefront. What defines a bona fide album?
Right.
Greenstrawks had to contend with the fact that The Pick of Destiny is very short, only 33 minutes. And that includes about 2 minutes of film dialogue. By any metric, that barely scrapes the definition of a full album.
Yet it succeeded where Foreigner's massive chart-topping efforts failed. And while the blogger readily admitted it's very silly and genuinely funny, he really hammered home the profound musical competence that underlies the joke.
This is the key distinction. This is not novelty music. This is two talented musicians, Jack Black and Kyle Gass, performing comedy. He highlights the serious guitar-picking skills and the adroit electric guitar work throughout. The music itself is serious, even if the lyrics are completely absurd.
The technical ability elevates it. If you look at the tracks he singled out, the metal, POD, Kickapoo, and especially the epic Beazle Boss, these aren't simple three-chord parodies. They're complex hard rock compositions.
Beazle Boss in particular is a multi-part dynamic track featuring Dave Grohl on drums as the voice of the devil. I mean, you cannot write a track with that kind of narrative structure, complex riffing, and vocal interplay without true, serious musical chops.
And the star power confirms the legitimacy of the music. Beyond Grohl, you have guest vocals from heavyweights like Meatloaf and the metal icon Ronnie James Dio. Absolute legends. These are people who lend their voices only to projects that meet a specific, high musical standard, regardless of the humor involved.
So the verdict was clear. This short, hilarious album was musically solid and consistent enough in its intent and execution to take down the classic Foreigner albums. It validated the Quest's methodology. Successful execution within a defined niche, even a comedic one, can trump inconsistent legacy rock.
But the true #1 victor of this group, the album that made the ranking decision shockingly easy, was Savage Garden's Affirmation.
Yes.
And this victory is the ultimate case study in the power of revisiting the source material.
It's a 20-year correction of history. Greenstocks candidly admitted his initial perception of it was heavily negative. When he first bought it, enthusiastically shortly after its release, he thought it was a retread of their debut and a bit more pedestrian.
So 2 decades ago, he was actively predisposed to rank it lower just because of his expectations. But the Quest forces objectivity. So what happened when he put it on again?
As soon as the album started playing for this group's evaluation, his perception shattered. He realized that Affirmation is, quote, clearly and exquisitely produced effort, and this is the core insight. Time and distance removed the context of the late 90s pop landscape and allowed him to finally appreciate the sheer technical quality that he missed originally.
Let's make this exquisitely produced effort concrete for you, the listener.
Yeah.
What exactly did he hear that changed his mind? We need to understand the sonic craftsmanship.
Well, it's all in the mix and the deliberate choices he heard. He describes the sound mixing as simply gorgeous and the vocals as crystal clear. When an album is exquisitely produced, it means the entire soundstage is clear.
Mm-hmm.
So if you listen to the way the bass line on a track like Hold Me sits perfectly beneath the acoustic guitars and the layered harmonies, it's never muddy, it never overwhelms, but it provides this foundational warmth.
That attention to detail is the difference between a good song and a master recording. He notes that each sound and instrumentation choice was deliberate. It's an album where every single layer serves a purpose, which prevents that feeling of filler or inconsistency that plagued Foreigner 4.
The overall feel he describes is a beautifully romantic set of songs, and they're noticeably slower in tempo than their debut. And that slower pace might have been what he originally mistook for pedestrian, but on reevaluation, he realized it allowed the intricate production work to breathe and shine.
So let's look at the tracks that exemplify this maturity. The opening title track, Affirmation, it's a mid-tempo, poetic effort. He says Darren Hayes' well-crafted lyrics are just beautifully assembled over a sophisticated pop melody.
And the ballads really showcase the vocal performance. Tracks like Hold Me, I Knew I Loved You, and Two Beds and a Coffee Machine are stellar examples. It's the sonic details that elevate them far beyond typical pop songs. The subtle string arrangements, the echo and space given to the vocal performance. It's almost an AOR mentality applied to late 90s synth pop.
They weren't purely ballads, though. They had one final pop moment, right? Highlighting Crash and Burn as raising the tempo again. A superb pop track that ended up being their last ever hit before the band dissolved.
And he did maintain his critical integrity by mentioning the one low point, Animal Song. He initially thought it was a bit naff upon release, and while he found it not quite as naff now, it remains the one weak link on an otherwise brilliantly consistent album.
So the final verdict for the #1 slot was absolute. The consistent, exquisite quality and production mastery of Affirmation made the decision to rank it above the nostalgic Foreigner classics shockingly easy. The pure, demonstrable quality of the source material just beat the power of personal history. Let's bring this incredible journey through round 2, group 38 to a close. We've witnessed a massive upset that really changes the way we think about music ranking.
Absolutely. So to recap, the final rankings for round 2, group 38 are now etched in the Quest's history. At number 1, Affirmation by Savage Garden.
Number 2, The Pick of Destiny by Tenacious D.
Third place, Head Games by Foreigner. And in fourth, 4 by Foreigner.
2 classic rock albums, foundational to the blogger's love of music, were eliminated by a comedy soundtrack and a late 90s pop record, and it was purely due to issues of consistency and execution. The Album Quest methodology has delivered 3 incredibly important takeaways for you, the learner, listening today.
The first, and I think the most profound, is the power of revisiting sources. The story of Affirmation is an absolute lesson in critical patience. Greenstock initially dismissed it as pedestrian. 20 years later, free from the contemporary noise, the hype, the comparison to the artist's debut, he could finally hear the album for what it was.
An exquisitely produced work of sonic craftsmanship.
Exactly.
And that's a huge lesson for any content consumer. Your immediate perception is often clouded by external factors, expectations, context, hype. Time allows the pure source material to speak for itself. You almost owe it to your collection to revisit records you once dismissed.
The second key insight is about the definition of an album itself. The Pick of Destiny challenges all the traditional standards of length and seriousness. It's a short album, riddled with dialogue. Yet it succeeded purely on its musical competence, the strength of its hooks, and the sheer high quality of execution within its chosen genre.
It proved that quality isn't measured in minutes or gravity of content, but in successful execution. If the product delivers fully on its promise, regardless of how short or how comedic, it can succeed in a ranking environment like this. The Quest has to accept these unexpected contenders that redefine what an album even is.
And finally, the third thematic takeaway, beautifully illustrated by that internal Foreigner battle, is the danger of high peaks. Foreigner 4 contained tracks the blogger openly ranks among his absolute favorites, but the album was penalized severely because of the clear and significant gap in quality in the other 60% of the tracks. The peaks were enormous, but the troughs were just too low.
And because of that inconsistency, the more consistent album, Head Games, which maintained a steadier, traditional rock sound and a more even quality across its track list, was ranked higher. It's a fundamental lesson in structured critique. Consistency and the overall experience often trump that flash-in-the-pan brilliance. The Album Quest is a brutal but profoundly fair methodology.